Texhnolyze is not a standard entry into the cyberpunk genre. There are no neon-soaked streets, no hackers, no technological megacities. Lux appears as a time-locked anachronistic hybrid, trapped in a state of entropy, looking forward and backwards simultaneously. But what truly sets Texhnolyze apart is the inclusion of the supernatural. The series foregrounds the tangible, a world ripe with decay, mired in factional conflicts, embroiled in dystopian moral and ethical quandaries, all while extinction looms in the background. But interwoven is a quiet paranormal layer that permeates the biological, technological, and sociological concerns, with a question about the spiritual fate of humanity. Lux itself is framed as a crucible, a metaphysical staging ground, not only for the final conflict in humanity's attempt for survival, but also as an intersection point between the physical plane and what lies beyond. The gang warfare and violence of the series are loud, direct, and obvious, while the supernatural elements exist as both firmament and patina. Texhnolyze leverages this narrative intersection as a means of crafting its own unique mythos, and as a result, it becomes necessary to dissect the visual symbols. One such symbol is the dragonfly. Obon, also known simply as Bon, is a Japanese Buddhist custom centered on honoring the spirits of deceased ancestors. Traditionally held during the summer, Obon has evolved over centuries into a time of family reunion and spiritual reflection. Many Japanese people return to their hometowns to visit ancestral graves, clean them, and make offerings. Lanterns are hung to guide spirits home, and at the festival's close, they're floated down rivers or into the sea to send those spirits back to the world beyond. As a quick side note, because Buddhism has almost as many forms as the cultures it takes root in, there is considerable variation in the stories, origins, and practices. We'll look at more broad strokes, but please be aware this is by no means an exhaustive explanation of these concepts. Obon's spiritual roots lie in the Mahayana Buddhist scripture called the Ulambana Sutra. The word Ulambana comes from Sanskrit and roughly translates to hanging upside down, a metaphor for profound suffering. Specifically, it refers to the torment of hungry ghosts, or preta. These damned souls are often depicted with grotesque skeletal bodies, distended bellies, and narrow throats or small mouths, physical manifestations of their eternal, insatiable hunger. In Japan, the preta are called gaki, and they dwell in naraka, a realm of torment tied to cyclical rebirth. If you're curious, we've previously discussed how this concept overlaps with Texhnolyze's portrayal of Lux as a reviving hell, and the shapes as technological preta. The core narrative of the sutra involves one of the Buddha's disciples, Maudgalyayana, known in Japan as Mokuren. After attaining supernatural insight, Mokuren becomes aware that his mother has been reborn in Naraka as a hungry ghost, condemned by her karma. From here, the story branches out depending on the tradition. In Indian versions, Maudgalyayana consults the Buddha, who instructs him to create merit, through offerings to the Sangha, or monastic community. This merit is then transferred to his mother. This not only liberates her, but benefits up to 7 generations of his ancestors. In the Chinese version, when Mu Jianlian tries to offer his mother food, it bursts into flames, symbolizing that material offerings alone can't relieve karmic suffering. Again, the Buddha advises him to generate merit through ritual and communal generosity. In a Laotian account, the disciple travels to the underworld to meet Yama, the Lord of Death, who reveals that the gates of hell open once a year, on the full moon of the 9th lunar month, allowing spirits to visit the world of the living. In Japan's Mokuren Densetsu, after following the Buddha's instructions, Mokuren rejoices when his mother is saved. He performs a dance of gratitude and joy, Bonodori, which becomes a central part of Obon's celebratory character. Over time, Buddhist ideas about karmic merit and liberation through altruistic acts blended with Shinto and native Japanese beliefs about ancestral spirits and the cyclical nature of life and death. The result is Obon, a spiritually rich, emotionally resonant tradition where families welcome back their ancestors, light lanterns to guide them, clean graves, and prepare offerings. Even Mokuren's dance lives on, transformed into Bonodori, a festive folk dance still performed today. It adds a distinctly communal and joyous tone to the festival, distinguishing Obon from more somber Buddhist mourning rituals. The festival typically ends with the symbolic return of spirits to the other world, often marked by toronagashi, or floating lanterns, which drift down rivers or across the sea. While local customs vary, Oban consistently marks a thinning of the veil between worlds, a time when the dead draw close and their presence is most deeply felt. During Obon, it's not uncommon to hear that a dragonfly might be the spirit of a loved one returning home. The Obon no Uta, a song sometimes played during services, has verses translated as "Riding on dragonflies. Guests are returning from the faraway Pure Land. It's the yearly visit of our guests. Dragonfly, dragonfly, red dragonfly. Guiding the spirits with lights and paper lanterns. We'll go out to greet our guests." Families are observant of signs of the visits of their ancestors, and might even leave doors open in the belief that these creatures, along with butterflies or fireflies, may be temporary vessels for ancestral souls. Part of this association stems from their seasonal timing. Dragonflies are most active in late summer, overlapping with Obon's celebration in mid-August. Their appearance during this liminal time, where the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead is thinnest, reinforces their role as spiritual intercessors. They're fast, silent, and elusive, often appearing suddenly and disappearing just as quickly. Much like the spirits honored during Obon, their visit is momentary but meaningful. At first, the dragonflies are easy to overlook. They may even seem incidental, as Texhnolyze often uses small visual flourishes amid its prominent negative space as part of its artistic language. Dragonflies appear on screen for the first time in Rogue 11, Vagrant, after the death of Yoshi. Ron laments despondently that nothing changes, and Yoshi's visage is seen overlaid in the wings of the insect as it lifts off from the fountain. This is a poignant and pivotal moment in the series that becomes clearer as we look back in hindsight. Whether we realize it or not, this first dragonfly is an omen of things to come. Dragonflies appear again in Rogue 12 when Ron collapses, seemingly comatose. It perches on a Yogitsune mask, just before Ichise is told the truth about his father's framing and murder. We've gone over the significance of the fox masks that Ron and her cult of followers wear in a previous video that's linked below. This moment begins reinforcing the supernatural nature of the appearance of dragonflies. Two prominent appearances are found in Rogue 15. First, when Hal witnesses the shapes for the first time. Another appears just after Ichise brutally slays Organo boss Tsujinaka at the request of Koakura. The cut to this dragonfly is more abrupt. Far from subtle, the creative team is once again drawing our eye to this symbol. In Rogue 17, a dragonfly is seen hovering near a dead body after a violent exchange in the train tunnel. Another dragonfly appears shortly after, while Ron is having a conversation with an unseen entity. She speaks in plural and remarks that they have arrived and will go together. Yet when she extends her hand, a dragonfly perches on her shoulder. This seems to be in line with her expectation, and she says, "Let's go," and smiles. As the series nears its end, the number of dragonflies increases dramatically. In Rogue 18, Throne, dragonflies are seen perching and landing on the rubble of the city, and can be heard darting about even off-screen. When we return to Luke's in Rogue 21, the dragonflies are covering the landscape, buzzing around the bodies of impaled citizens. Over top of this, the sage, as he drifts into the caverns below, ruminates once more on how Luke's is hell. In the final Rogue, Myth, a dragonfly can be seen perched on a piece of rebar, overlooking the chaos below before it darts away suddenly. As Ichise wanders through the immobilized shapes on his way to the Opera House for his final confrontation with Kano, dragonflies are seen flying about behind him and perching on the shapes. This establishes our primary pattern: the intimate connection between dragonflies, change, and death. Death is one of the most eminent narrative explorations of Texhnolyze. The series is preoccupied with death in both biological and spiritual forms, and most of its conflicts revolve around desperate attempts to stave off this fate through some kind of evolution. But these struggles prove futile. Whether by circumstance or destiny, death remains an inevitability. This idea recurs thematically throughout the series in symbolic detail. In many ways, Texhnolyze functions as a speculative elegy for humanity itself. What becomes of a creature stripped of place and purpose, left only to languish before accepting its end? But the series goes beyond grimly charting extinction. Its meditation on death extends into the paranormal, overlaying the visible world with unseen layers of myth and spirit. The Kitsune and Yogitsune masks connect Ran and her cult to fate and the supernatural. The shapes echo the torments of hungry ghosts in Buddhist cosmology. Raphia, growing from the corpses of the dead, is implied to be imbued with spiritual properties as a result. The theonormals overlap with common depictions of shades from underworld traditions, while the surface itself resembles the same afterlife realm of hazy souls fading in and out of existence. Taken together, the world of Texhnolyze seems perpetually in between, with reality itself hovering on a metaphysical threshold. This motif is consistent with Chiaki Konaka's broader body of work, where layered reality is a recurring theme. Serial Experiments Lane, Ghost Hound, Big O, and even Digimon Tamers all investigate the dissolution of boundaries between worlds and the intersections of humanity with other planes of existence. In Texhnolyze, humanity's steady march towards such an intersection gives rise to an increasing presence of the unseen. The supernatural embodied in the Raphia, Ran, and the voice of the city becomes more tangible as conflicts boil over. Obon, a time when spirits briefly return to the world of the living, further refines this concept. Read with this context, the second half of Texhnolyze becomes a ghostly convergence, where the dead and the living overlap so closely, their separation becomes little more than formality. Within this framework, the dragonfly emerges as a crucial motif and metaphysical signifier. Viewed in one light, dragonflies symbolize liberated spirits. They appear after pivotal deaths, Yoshi, Sujinaka, and others, darting across the screen like souls suddenly unmoored. Their clustering around the bug-like shapes is especially telling. These machines, meant to preserve life through technologization, are reduced to empty vessels, their humanity stripped away. The dragonfly's presence suggests the absence of souls, underscoring the futility of Kano's project. At the same time, dragonflies serve as omens of spiritual death to come. Yoshi's dragonfly foreshadows the instability that enables Kano's rise. Sujinaka's dragonfly signals the collapse of Lux's order and Ichise's initiation into the Organo and his destructive path. The killing of Sujinaka is one more step towards the fate that Ran sees. When Hal first encounters a shape, a dragonfly follows, foretelling not only his physical death, but also his transformation into a mindless drone, a spiritual death of agency and selfhood. They also point towards spiritual intercession. Dragonflies frequently appear around Ran during moments of heightened supernatural activity. When Ichise sees visions of his father, first in a dreamlike state, then later more fully as a shade, the connection with dragonflies reinforces the thinning boundary between worlds. Ichise's reconciliation with his father resembles Obon's central purpose and mythic roots. The release of suffering, the mutual liberation of the living and the dead, and most especially between a parent and a child. By the end of the series, as Lux deteriorates, dragonflies appear with increasing frequency. They hover in ruined streets, rest silently on the bodies of the dying and transformed, and bear witness to humanity's collapse. The dragonflies also embody a kind of beauty left cruelly out of reach. If they are spirits, they do not appear outright as sympathetic witnesses, but present reminders of death, drifting in and out of the frame, with a detachment that borders on indifference. They might seem almost mocking in their unconcern, hovering lightly while the people of Lux grind themselves down in violence and despair. Yet this very disconnection also makes them strangely liberating. Unlike the living, they are no longer bound to the cycles of power, destruction, and survival that consume the city. Their presence suggests both freedom from suffering and a quiet taunt to those still trapped within it, a reminder that release lies only in surrender to the inevitable. They are emblems of death, but are also markers of passage, traces of spirits moving between worlds as the final moments unfold. As they drift across the screen, increasingly frequent and ever more symbolically loaded, dragonflies change the dynamic of the series and ending, forcing us to look deeper into the metaphysical underpinning. Their presence evokes a strange emotional tension. In Japanese tradition, dragonflies are seen as auspicious. They signal courage, victory, even hope. They're harbingers of change. But here, they arrive in the midst of a devastating end. Their frail beauty feels tragically out of place among the wreckage of Luke's, which only deepens their impact. In the context of Obon, we can read them any number of ways, as the souls of the dying escaping their tortured existence or newly mechanized shells, as the spirits of Luke's ancestors drawing closer to bear witness. Perhaps these are spirits who never truly left, now manifest as the final death looms closer. Or is their presence not one of spectating, but release, and to usher the remaining humans to the other side? The ambiguity is critical. Just as Obon is a time when the veil between worlds thins, Texhnolyze offers no stable answer as to which side we're seeing. The dragonflies, like the spirits of Obon, inhabit a liminal space. They remind us that endings and beginnings, life and death, hope and despair, victory and defeat, departure and return, often exist within the same breath. The final movement of Texhnolyze isn't just a chronicle of humanity's death and funeral. It's also a ritual reunion, a ghost festival at the end of the world. We see a break from the reviving hell, and its nihilistic eternal return. Instead, the barriers fall in a final moment where all things converge, living and dead, real and symbolic, meeting in quiet dissolution. This collapse of the world isn't an explicit ending, but an ellipses.